Welcome back, everybody. And coming up next, we have Ms. Renata Spinks, the Assistant Director, Deputy CIO, and Senior Information Security Officer at United States Marine Corps. With an extensive depth and breadth of knowledge and expertise in systems engineering, business operations, and cybersecurity, Ms. Spinks quickly ascended to the executive ranks, evolving to now being one of the nation's highly sought-after cyber technologists, system engineers, and leaders. Now serving as the nation's first, she was serving as the nation's first cyber technology officer. She's recently been promoted, so congratulations. Her media impact was noted in her recent selection as the 2020 Stars and Stripes Black Engineer of the Year Award recipient for the Department of Defense Senior Executives. Ms. Spinks is passionate about public service, sisterhood, and academia. She's the founder of a not-for-profit organization for youth called Rising Footsteps and is the director of the Boss Lady Network. She's also the author of Focus 8 Steps to Unmasking Your You and is looking forward to the publishing of her latest book, Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Boss Lady. She is a Louisiana native who loves New Orleans Saints football, cooking, and is a recognized CIAA elite student athlete who still loves to play basketball. Ms. Spinks brings keen presence and pivots from the status quo, rapidly influencing others to adopt new ways of thinking, producing solutions focused on improving technology, interpersonally adjusting to different cultures and behaviors, all while fostering continuous growth. In short, she's known as the fixer and game changer to every challenge resolution she leads or becomes a part of. So we're in very good company once again here on the show. So welcome, Renata.
Thanks so much for that wonderful introduction.
I hope I got everything right there, Renata. As we said, you've recently been promoted, haven't you? So congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Definitely grateful to ascend to a higher responsibility. And a shorter commute.
That's always welcome.
Yeah.
Okay, Renata, I'm going to pass over to you, and I know you're going to give a presentation as if you were live with us on stage today, rather than doing a slideshow. You're going to do it as if you were on stage. So over to you.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate you having me here today virtually. With the things that are happening with the pandemic and all of the healthcare concerns, not able to join in person, but happy to be with everyone today. And I hope that some of the information that I'm sharing with you will not only, help you pivot in your careers, because I'm always looking for cyber personnel and people who like to, zone in on what the cyberspace and information environment is about. But even also just to give you some information of what the Marine Corps is doing and what the Department of Defense is working on at large. Give you a little bit about our experience, not just during the pandemic, because that seems to always be an area of focus as you hear buzzwords like zero trust, distributed workforce, remote logging in, remote work, working from home, whichever thing that you want to call it. Basically not having to be in the office to get office work done. And so you'll hear me talk a little bit about that. But what I'd like to do is kind of orient everyone holistically to what is cyber and what the information environment means to us today, whether that's artificial intelligence, whether that's machine learning, quantum computing. So I ask that you sit back and relax. I know there will be a question and answer session at the end. So there's 3 or 4 questions that I think the team is preparing, since this is one of those ones we want to be a little bit more engaging in. But I'm also going to make sure that I try to address some of the questions I've been getting on LinkedIn. So yes, I do read my messages on LinkedIn, and I appreciate those who have sent some messages about some of the things you want to hear about. So I hope that I will address some of those today. And if I do not, please don't charge it to intentional heart. Just charge it to my head, because I want to make sure that I at least address some of your questions. So you think about the Marine Corps, and you just heard that I was recently promoted, and you heard a long list title. And so it's like, what's all in that? Assistant Director of IT, Deputy CIO for the Marine Corps, and Senior Information Security Officer. So that's all about the information environment, not just air, land, and sea, but there's also cyber, and then there's cyber space, and then there's space command. And so I like to hone in that all of that is part of war fighting. And as the Commandant of the Marine Corps likes to situate it as Force Design 2030, my responsibility is kind of looking at what force design looks like today, force design for 2025, and force design for 2030. That is the goal. That is a reduction in, the way we do things in many areas. Sometimes that may be funding. Sometimes it is reduction in the landscape from a cybersecurity perspective. And the information that we're using, whether that's, decommissioning applications that are no longer serving us or that are no longer in use, or redesigning applications so that we can do a better job of war fighting or having access to information, as well as the way we, build our ships, the way we deploy systems from an acquisition perspective, whether that's our amphibious design, water vehicles, you name it. If it has war fighting in it for the Marine Corps, then that's what we're taking a look at when you think about force design. We think about training. And that's just not training from, an infantry battalion or an infantry Marine expeditionary forces perspective, but also training those same personnel to understand the technologies that they are employing on these different systems that they use, whether that's technology on our ships, whether that's technology at land, water, or sea. But also the technology in cyberspace, because as that communication is happening, we have to make sure not only that the operations continue and the war fighting is at peak, but we also have to protect the identities of our war fighters, our Marines, and our civilian and contractors that are supporting us, as well as our comrades from these sister services. We also have to look at space. I know everyone's heard about Space Command, and what does that really mean? And so that is another way of communicating from satellite imaging. You hear things, want to try to bring it home for you. You hear things like Dish Network. You may hear about what's the other one? DirecTV. Those are all satellite communications, and those are thought of for channels and the way we can stream and be entertained. But some of those same technologies, those radio frequencies and satellite communications, are also used to achieve a result within warfighting. And so no matter where the technology is being employed, there has to be a thought process of security. Some of the questions I got was, is the Marine Corps getting ready to create astronauts and make, some of their Marines work with NASA, because you hear Space Command. And so while that would be super duper, that's not what we're talking about or looking at. Definitely in support of all the great things NASA is doing and will do. But from a Space Command, within our perspective, is ensuring that when we are communicating and beaconing from, radio frequencies to satellite imaging, and whatever signal that we are using to communicate, not only is it secure, but it's also being used with this intent. And then there's this other thing called insider threat. Right. And, when you think about insider threat, you're thinking about making sure that those who have access to not only our systems, but also our data, the identities of our personnel, our allies, that information is secure. That information is only accessed just in time and on a need to know basis. And that leads me to my next topic that we want to dive deep into today, which is zero trust architecture. And zero trust architecture is not a new word by any means. It is something I think that has been being executed for years now, at least 20 years, right? At least every time we are experiencing digital transformation, whether that was the .com boom, all the way into defense in depth, and now partnering with industry for cloud consumption, which is large scale data centers, high performance computing, large scale analytics, and quantum computing. There's always been zero trust architecture. we just called it defense in depth, or, and now we're modernizing or adding more to it. We are designing to kind of reduce what we used to, I would say, take a comforting space on, meaning previously, maybe we did not segment our network the way we do today. I'm almost sure we didn't, right? Because as technology evolved, so does the challenges that we face within the cybersecurity realm. So some of the things that the Marine Corps has achieved was being the first service to consume cloud services from an O365 perspective during the pandemic. We had planned that for about a 12 to 24 month project from a schedule perspective. And better lucky than good, we were able to have everyone consuming services via Teams and OneDrive within 90 days. And within 12 months, we had the entire Marine Corps not only consuming services from a Teams, from a collaboration perspective, but actual mailbox movement and actual mailbox migration. That took us about 6 to 9 months with a valid and acceptable user experience. And so we can't forget about the user experience. And right now we are in the throes of SharePoint Online and migrating all that data from many of our on-premise data centers into the SharePoint Online environment. And we also are looking at data center optimization. And data center optimization is based on so many warfighting applications that we use, no matter the classification level, whether that's unclassified or all the way up from secret to the top secret space. Those applications are resident to our data centers. And we think about natural disasters. We think about cost reductions and ways we can look at spending more efficiently, and then winning the global fight. And part of winning the global fight is making sure we have access to information, correct? And so that access is based on either applications or systems. And so what we're getting after now is, what are those applications that we no longer use or that we no longer need? And what are some of the applications where we can absorb newer technologies to make us better, faster, stronger, and more lethal? So while each of that focus that you just heard me speak on maybe the past 10 minutes has been about the technology, I'd like to orient you to the people side, because I am an advocate for the people. If the people is a space where we skip, then no matter how great the technology is, we are still going to be lacking from an adoption perspective, as well as winning the global fight. Meaning you can't employ the technology in the proper manner if we have not addressed the people part. So from a people perspective, we're thinking training, acquiring the right talent, sustaining the right talent, user experience, as well as creating governance and compliance mechanisms, so that as we continue to make changes throughout our environment, whether that's digital transformation, whether that's modernization of legacy systems, whether that is, creating something new, because you can modernize what you already have. You can digitally transform, from on-premises to cloud is a great example. That is transformation. That's not modernizing. That is pure transformation. But then there's this other thing I like to add, which is creation. Because in order to absorb new technology that otherwise did not exist, for the Marine Corps, we think of that as artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data analytics. Never before existed. And so that is a creativity perspective. And as we look at creativity, modernization, and transformation, having a zero trust architecture is so critical, because in order to do all of those things in an efficient and effective manner, we have to consider, and not only consider, but we have to address that there's an adversary out there. And that adversary is not interested in you having a great experience. They are not interested in you protecting your data. But what they are interested in is degrading your ability to execute your mission, causing discord and dissension by making sure that, that person could impede, or that entity could impede trust, right? There are monetary reasons why cyber criminals are executing some of their activities. It could be just reputational. But the point is, within the Department of Defense, and even outside of the Department of Defense, across the federal government at large, and our partners within industry, commercially, privately, it is all about the data. It is about getting to the data, acquiring the data, and unfortunately using that data against us. Whether that is shutting down your debit card, I know everyone can relate to that, right? The many different breaches that we've experienced in the past has caused some type of either consternation that either, invoked mistrust or did a combination of a few things, from invoking mistrust to causing, increases of cost, because breaches are very expensive. Identity and access management is something that when you're in response, it is costly to hours. It is costly to the personnel we are using to execute some of the incident response activities. It's costly for equipment, right? And so all of those precautions that we take are things we have to consider when you think about cyber and the information environment. So it's not just about, the way we look at using technology, but it is holistically, everything you do is about the information environment. And I hope by the time we get finished today that everything you do will also be about understanding that if I don't have cybersecurity in the forefront of my thought process as I am either creating, modernizing, or transforming, then we may be a little bit behind the curve, and we may be more reactive than proactive. And proactivity, it not only saves you money, but if you're like me, it saves you a headache, right? And so it can be very stressful when you're trying to make sure that not only you're protecting the identities and the data of your users within the business operations perspective, but I have that director of IT title because of the warfighting piece of this. And for the Marine Corps and all of my sister services within the Department of Defense, we're warfighting every day. This presentation is part of warfighting. I'm providing information and I'm communicating what it is that we're trying to do, because I anticipate that this information will be helpful as we continue to build and information share to achieve so many results. From things like Comply to Connect, our end user equipment, and ensuring that systems are compliant. That is one project. Another project you will hear me talk a lot about is our big data analytics platform, which is called BDP Chaos. And that is our cyber hunt. And those are systems that have been created to absorb information, ingest information, process that information, and create data that is visualized in a manner that our decision makers can understand. And that is whether that's a dashboard, whether that is a display that gives us the status of all of our cyber protection teams, or the locations of our warfighters or missions that we have going on in cyberspace, as well as we would love to evolve, and we're looking at evolving into, increasing that presence of what is the actual status of our systems aboard ships, aboard our amphibs, within some of the austere locations that have limited connectivity, or in some cases you're deployed, or intermittent connectivity. And what does that look like when you've gone from consuming cloud services now back to a localized or on-premise access point? And so that's why our zero trust architecture is designed by a single identity. Marine Corps does not have multiple identities or domains. We address that during our domain consolidation and elimination. Again, taking an approach for Force Design 2030, looking at 2025 and the here and now. How do we reduce that landscape and still not impede the user experience and provide our warfighters with the things they need? So that is an area of space where no matter what we're doing, no matter what we're executing, again, whether we're creating, transforming, or modernizing, it is all about the data, managing identities and access and credentialing, and creating that entire zero trust for just-in-time access, conditional access, and the ability to manage the diagnosis of, making an assessment of access, whether that's a yes or a no, or, well, yes, but because of the location you're in, or the IP address that's registered, you can only have access to XYZ because, again, we have defense in depth with a mixture of continuous monitoring, continuous response, and just-in-time access. And so you think about zero trust for the Marine Corps, that's what it is. It's not that we're doing something new. So we are not creating. I would say that we are transforming in many areas, but we have had to modernize our infrastructure to do so because the consumption of cloud services, that's a lot of bandwidth. And we all know I'm here today in the Pentagon, and sometimes when you think about it, and people say, "Oh, you're in the Pentagon," maybe 10 years ago, no one had even heard of being able to live stream from the Pentagon and talk to people like you today about some of the technologies that we're employing. So that within itself, I think, is transformational. But what that also does is it also opens us up to understanding that there are ways that we can still collaborate and communicate in a secure manner, and also continue to have a great user experience. At least I'm having a good time right now, and I hope you guys are too as well. But not only just have that user experience, but also still provide the mission, those critical elements that are needed so that we can achieve those goals within the mission, and ensure that as we look at continuous monitoring, when we look at the risk management framework to, those different applications that we have to use, they have to be certified, they have to be compliant. And so as we think about all of that, and our people, our processes, our technology, training our personnel, acquiring the right talent, sustaining the right talent within the civilian, contractual, and Marine Corps workspace, as well as doing talent, executing talent exchange. As we look across the services outside of the Department of Defense, I am 100% advocate of talent exchange and looking at, all the branches of the federal government and even into industry on how we can, make sure that we are absorbing new information and looking at newer ways to do things. So research and development is just something that, the Marine Corps truly focuses on. We call it wargaming, but, no matter what you call it, it's all about information sharing, finding out ways to do things more efficient. And one thing that the Marine Corps loves to do is we take calculated risks. Right. And we will push the needle. We will do things like in less than 6 months, transition everyone's mailbox into a cloud environment and use Teams for, promotion ceremonies, unheard of in the Marine Corps. Use Teams to hold promotion boards, unheard of in the Marine Corps. But all of the virtual transformation that has occurred is what we think about today. And over the hump and next of the hill is how can we use technology in a more sophisticated manner while still considering the protections that are needed, especially in the artificial intelligence, machine learning space, because there's so much data that's being processed either at our endpoints, our midpoints, as well as within our communications from radio frequencies to full spectrum. All of the above is all about data. That data has to go somewhere, which means it has to be stored. We have to use it, which means it has to be computed. And then after you store and compute and process, now you're extracting the results of all of this data. And what are those different decisions that are being made to help not only war fighting from the perspective of what we know in the North Capital region, right? The internal to the Pentagon is what I would say, but also outside of the Pentagon, in places where our expeditionary forces are doing the things that are needed to not only keep us safe domestically, but also internationally. And so, again, the answer to that is cyber and the information environment. It is a holistic thing. You think of it as the globe, right? And you have a globe on your desk and you're turning it around and you see all these countries, all the continents, et cetera, all the cities, all the states. But that's what cyber and the information environment is. It is everything. It is not just when you're on your computer. It is also when you're outside having a conversation and someone may be socially engineering you so that they can acquire information and maybe use it against you at a later time. So that's what I wanted to talk about, not so much techie, but just to situate and orient everyone on no matter how great the technology is, no matter how good you can sit down and write policies and put processes in place and even use technology to implement processes and implement different guardrails that you need. If you don't concentrate on the people and understand that that people element is what's the most critical, then you're failing right before you get out of the gates. And with that, I'm going to transition it back to the moderator who has a few questions. So I'm going to take those questions and make sure that I can answer them as best as possible.
Thank you, Renata. That was really good. I enjoyed that a lot. And you did say a couple of minutes ago that you were having a good time and you hoped that we were having a good time. Well, I was having a good time. The rest of our audience were as well. Yeah, so a couple of questions for you. And as you said at the beginning, you do answer your LinkedIn questions as well. So if anyone reaches out to Renata, you can, you know, she said it now live on this show. She will answer your questions. So
yes, I will. I don't know how soon it would be, but I will do my best to answer them.
Okay, great. Well, we've got a couple of minutes where we can try and address a couple of questions.
Okay.
Now, at several points actually during that presentation, well, you started off by effectively almost doing like a recruitment pitch by the sounds of it, because you said you were always looking for talent. So how hard is it to find the right people right now? Because the people are talking about, you know, a talent shortage, and obviously, you know, in cyber and STEM subjects particularly. And so how hard is it to find people? And does the government, or does the US government, get the best people, or are they moving more towards the private sector?
You know, that's a good question. There are challenges. Managing talent, acquiring talent, sustaining talent within your particular workforce is definitely challenging. We're pulling from the same pool of people, and everyone has the same challenges that they're trying to overcome, which is not only just protection, but being proactive. How can we get out of the reaction mode and start designing systems and creating our system of systems to where our systems are so resilient that things like automation, machine learning, artificial intelligence gives us a little bit less of the challenge of needing a person staring at the computer and trying to ward off any cyber attacks or outages and et cetera. So there is a challenge. But your question was, how difficult is it to find people? That's easy. That's the easy part. Finding people who have the skill set is easy. It is finding people who can come into the space. You know, you think about security clearances. That is time consuming. The pandemic and things being so virtual has not made that any easier. But also competing with not just private industry, but even internal to the Department of Defense. We've got Army, Navy, Air Force. While we love our sister services, we all have different challenges that we're trying to get after. And so the skill sets can be very complex. The experience level can be very complex. You know, I get a lot of questions about interns and building talent. And we definitely look at ways we can build talent and try to start catching up to that curve that we're behind. But then there's those day-to-day operations that are a little bit more complex. And you kind of sort of need a little bit more of a seasoned engineer who's seen some things, you know, and can help you help us know what are the options out there. What are the incident responses or proactive ways or engineering designs that we can come up with? So it's, you know, the talent is definitely scarce, but it's because of the capacity, and everyone is solving some portion of the same problem. So we're doing our best. We're looking at community colleges and trying to build that talent. And to be totally honest with you, the way the Marine Corps looks at it is, if we can take, you know, our service to the cloud in 6 months, we got to find a way to develop expertise just as quick. And I think we're doing that. And I think we're seeing that across the board. You're seeing people pick up on technology a whole lot faster nowadays. I think our brains are just trained now it's kind of like when you teach yourself how to read very fast. I think our brains are starting to process information a lot faster, absorb the skills, and then be able to implement it. So I think we see a combination of culturally we're responding, as well as institutionally from an HR perspective. We're just trying to do better jobs at recruitment and retention.
Okay, that's great. It's a great and comprehensive answer, and unfortunately, that's all we've got time for. Unfortunately, so Renata, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, stay tuned. We'll be right back.